Yeah, I just realised that Oxford is not actually in this video, apart from a cameo appearance at the end, but Ian Butcher's Oxford stunt double is in it. Monday, we're all supposed to be heading west out of Wanaka, but someone said the Otago Land-Rover Enthusiasts Club were heading to Macetown, so now we're heading in completely the wrong direction. The meeting point was on the Cadrona Road about 8 AM, but that was changed to 7:30 AM due to Series 1 road speed apparently. Cheeky buggers. Macetown is an old gold mining town up the Arrow River, just north of Arrowtown, where gold was discovered in 1862. Most of the mines had shut by 1910, and Macetown slowly became another Central Otago Ghost town by the 1940s. Our plan is to travel up the old road, following the Arrow River to Macetown, and on to the Anderson Stamper Battery up Rich Burn. It has been about 36 years since I last went into Macetown with the Otago Land-Rover Owners Club during the Bannockburn Jamboree way back in 1988. After over a week in the same motel, everything was chucked in the Defender and we headed south out of Wanaka. My daughter and her partner Miles happened to be in Wanaka at the time, but Steph had come down with a cold, so Miles was keen to jump in and have a look at Macetown. We snaked our way back up and over the Crown Range and down into the Kawerau Valley before heading to Arrowtown and the Arrow River. Arrowtown was an autumn gold as we bunched up and headed up the true right of the river. I was actually surprised how many fossicas we saw on our way in, searching for that elusive gold glint. Huge quantities of gold were originally found in the Arrow by Captain William Fox, who kept the secret to himself for quite some time back in 1862, when it was said he was shoveling nuggets up off the beaches in this valley. Eventually Fox was caught, and the actual claim was registered and established. A small settlement called Fox's was set up on the banks of the Arrow River, but because Captain Fox was of a somewhat dubious character, the town was soon renamed Arrowtown. The pipeline we're following was built by the Arrow Irrigation Company back in the 1920s as a water supply for the farms between Arrowtown and Lake Hayes. We were barely a kilometre up the Arrow River where we again crossed under the old Arrowtown water pipe and commenced an ascent up the road out of the river when Steve Stant in his 1952 Series 1 started to bump steer across the track and skidding to a stop. We backed back down the steep track and we all got stuck in to determine the cause of the loss of traction. The diagnosis after jacking the back off the ground was that the diff had cracked a spider gear or shaft. Steve opted to stay with his vehicle until our return, which made for a very long day for Steve, which actually turned out to be an even longer day than anyone envisaged. But in true Top Gear spirit, we left Steve behind and pressed on up the valley.
Leon to Bird, are you guys mobile? Mike Leon, we're just got Steve turned around in case there's any dramas with the turnaround, and we'll be on our way in a minute. Yeah, don't take too long because there's another party waiting for us.
So they planted these rose hips, so yeah.
Are they edible?
Yeah. You want me to stop? I can.
It's pretty good when it's ultra marathon running.
We made a quick stop to check out the header dam for the Arrow irrigation scheme, which appeared to be solid packed with river silt.
So I've got 3 bottles of wine in the back, a loaf of bread,
3 bottles of wine.
a big packet of buns, hot cross buns, bottle of tomato sauce, bottle of ranch sauce, full bottle of milk up to 38 degrees, minus 20 degrees to 38 degrees. Yes. I covered his body and it was actually a have a look at the fabrics that they use. It was like a fine merino that has a fine mat, and they couldn't believe how fine it was, eh? Yeah. It's running.
Yeah.
And it crashed down into the riverbed, smashed its way through the schist concrete layer,
Yeah.
and all the buckets came up full of gold.
Really?
Gold is formed in white quartz rock and can be seen as thin gold lines in the quartz seams. The quartz rock is smashed up by the rivers, chewing their way into the rock faces over millions of years, grinding the quartz and gold into dust. With the formation of New Zealand being thrust up from the seabed, gold deposits have been found in river-worn quartz pebbles as high as 1400 metres, as is the case of Mount Buster diggings high on the Ida Range, or in most cases in soft shaly hillsides like up the Arrow River. Sluice guns or water cannons are used to wash the soft river deposits into a slurry to wash down over grid plates, and since the gold is so heavy, it is caught in these catch trays. The water sluicing changed vast areas of Central Otago, literally moving mountains, which often collapsed and drowned countless miners over the years.
What are those little terraces around there? Oh, they could be all sluice workings. They would have been dammed up.
We will be passing some good examples of sluice debris piles later in the day. Sluicing and panning for gold is always the first stage of prospecting, followed later by mining companies looking for the mother lode. Macetown was up near the source of the quartz, so the gold was still locked up in the rock. This was mined, and stamper batteries were used to mechanically smash the quartz up to release the gold.
Devil's apprenticeship, I think he's been there forever, his whole life.
They're back. Did you hear Steve just then, Leon? Say again, Alan? Did you hear Steve on the radio just then? Over? No, didn't. Did you hear him?
Couldn't time out. End up down back of the we go through the Cape York, kept on coming across a couple.
Bikers.
Well, he was driving a Nissan Ute.
We've driven up the track up the valley to I guess to the end, but I can't find that battery stamper.
I can't believe that you can see it from a mile off.
Worked out.
Alluvial gold was discovered in a tributary of the Arrow River late in 1862 by the Mace brothers working their way up the Arrow River and the Beale brothers prospecting their way over from Skippers. This tributary was given the fitting name of Rich Burn or Rich River.
Oh, they're looking for the battery still. Take one. Found it.
There are several stamper batteries up the Arrow River, and we visited the Anderson battery, which was operating between 1907 through to 1914, so 40 odd years after the panning and sluicing period had finished.
Step.
Yeah.
So if it carried on, we would have stopped at the lunch stop anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, would have.
We're going where are the rest of the guys? So I wanted to do that one actually.
We stopped for lunch near some of the remaining Macetown village buildings. It was great to see these old schist and mud buildings have been looked after and restored, unlike the many forlorn and isolated skeletal remains that you see out the back of the Dunstan Road and Old Man Range, telling a story of unimaginable hardship in a treeless landscape and some of the coldest temperatures regularly recorded in New Zealand. Tummies filled and tea sloshed, we packed up and headed back out.
That's not a good idea. Puts a big bump at you, kisses the front edge of the roof, takes the front tip. There's so many people killed every year on beaches that are riding on the roofs or the bonnets of vehicles,
Okay, yeah.
and it hits a creek, and at the moment too it slows it down and they carry on at the same speed, and then their vehicle picks up and runs over them straight after it.
Since there's no cell phone coverage up the valley, I used my satellite inReach to message Rod Corbett to see if he could score another diffhead somewhere around Wanaka for Steve. This road would have just been a packhorse route until the area hit the mining stage in the later part of the 19th century.
That's not.
I thought there'd be a few more buildings standing.
I thought there was. I thought there was still the remains of the sluice channel down the bottom end, and that's where your filters are. Take all about it, sluicing.
The water sluicing changed vast areas of Central Otago, literally moving mountains, which often collapsed and drowned countless miners over the years.
This sort of in the old sluice channel. Gold fragments out. That's the next.
I'm hoping that she has some sort of recovery because
Come out the one in New Zealand, they're coughing their lungs out.
Far more friendly than stupid hitchhikers.
They're still on the same channel anyway.
There's nothing worse than that feeling, when you're
That's right. And she's asked me why I've gone before wind. That's exactly why I've gone.
4 hours into
It
your
used
hike.
to always happen to me, eh?
Yeah.
You're way the fuck up the top of the hill.
I could see it getting a bit monogamous.
It's set up for mountain bikes now. And that's what Peter and Pauline did was the common thing now to actually do the ghost trail and carry on and do the heaving. So they got a
What's the ghost trail?
it's actually a mountain bike track that they've made up, and it goes in from Lyle and follows the old route across the top of the mountain top of Karamea. Yeah, it's hard enough to do the rotary trail and back around.
But yeah, I mean, what? It sounds like she did it to herself, though. I mean, it's like,
Well, yeah.
sit in the garage all season and like, oh, well,
I had the same experience. I was
sweet.
well, it just saves your centre of gravity, you know. That's a good shot. Turn it off?
I'm trying to work out how to.
Fresh it down. Is it on the screen?
And you can't even open a web page. Falling behind.
We're on the Series 3 and the Series 3's got an oil bath air filter. Just fucking brilliant. I'd love to put one on this. They just don't leave anything, you know. The whole lot just gets sent up to this bath at the bottom. Bloody brilliant design.
Does it inhibit suction at all? Or? So the oil still sits on top.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's the bubble down through it. It actually sucks through the... Steve's actually
Looks factory. Yeah.
Evidence of the original road can still be seen in this example of stacked schist slabs used to retain the road, hammered by thousands of vehicles for well over 100 years.
That's a good one, Peter. Absolutely. I mean, you just couldn't. Well, they are the right ones for it. What's the chances of that?
It's times like this it pays not to dwell on what's holding the road up. It was a long way down to the riverbed.
Cut him off, he said, I've got the skills to do that. And I had my nut terrains on the disco, so I was able to put on the all flags. Thanks, that's the last vehicle. Hi. That was a good shot. Responded heaps. We even bought some Range Rover bits off him. I've never met the guy. We get to say hello with him.
Yeah.
Weird.
There was no other way we could sneak out of the valley, so we had to pick up Steve on the way through. Just kidding, buddy.
Concrete. He's getting out the hook on him. Oh, I thought so.
There's a Amrock ute here, just by the pipeline.
Hilux came up the other way on it.
Steve managed to get most of the way out in two-wheel drive, with just a couple of tows required from the Defender to get him over the steeper riverbanks. The extra load on the front diff can result in secondary breakages, so we had to be careful.
Right, Steve?
Get a little bit more, here we go.
I got any closer up my ass, you'd just be out the exhaust pipe.
Back at Rod's place, we set about gutting the back end out of Steve's vehicle, only to discover it was actually a snapped short axle, so game over. Rod said grab your camera, and we all piled into Oxford, me for the last time, to make a presentation outside the Wanaka Search and Rescue headquarters to Aaron Nicholson, chairman of the Wanaka Search and Rescue team, with a cheque for $4,500 being the proceeds raised through the Oxford Land-Rover rally held on the 3 days prior to the Wheels at Wanaka. When we got back up to Rod's place, we looked at the various options, but Steve had taken the failure of the axle quite hard and simply wanted to get home. Most of the crew had pressed on to Haast, where we had booked in for the night. We were over 2 hours away from a beer and a feed on the remote west coast of the South Island, so we shook hands, wished Steve all the best, and parted ways, Steve heading northeast over the Lindis Pass, while we set off west over the Haast to the coast. The race was on, well as best you can in a Series 1. We hit the servo at Wanaka to fill up and grab a medicinal pie and set off towards Lake Hawea and over the Haast Pass, arriving at Haast just before 9 p.m. I rang the Hard Antler pub and they said they were just closing the kitchen, so I made a phone order and Neil and I dashed down to the pub for a beer and a feed, which was just awesome. I hadn't been to the Hard Antler for over 6 months, since the Barn Bay trip in October last year, and it was great to be back, and I cannot speak highly enough of our hosts, who always made us feel very welcome with West Coast hospitality. The next morning I sent Steve a text to see how far he'd got, and he was just on the outskirts of Picton, having driven right through the night, right across the Mackenzie country, Canterbury Plains and up the Kaikoura coast, in a soft top Series 1. Tough bastard, eh? Bloody legend. Tomorrow in for a very rare treat, one that no one was expecting, and our adventure was rewarded by simply the best weather anyone could ask for our trip north up the coast.